started. This is a big man. Baruch Hashem. Well, you need to be. You need to up your game. That helps a lot. All right. Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Daf Lamed Ches. Baruch Hashem. There are some relatively easy halachic gemaras followed by an agadata. Woo! My gosh, what Masechta are we in? This is like Megillah. It's a Hanukkah miracle. That's right. Hanukkah miracle. We're starting at the Mishnah toward the bottom of Lamed Zayin Amud Beis. We're 2/3 of the way down, and here we're discussing different kind of damages, not between a regular person and another regular person, but let's say a regular person and hektish, or a regular person and a goy, or a regular person and a kusi, who we're not sure if they're gerei emes, or they're really gerei arayos from the word lions, that they really. So we're going to navigate a lot of those, and the Gemara interjects, seemingly out of the blue. The Gemara interjects a number of agadatas. Let's get started. The Mishnah writes, Shor shel Yisrael shenagach shor shel hektish. Now it's not interpersonal anymore. It's me and a shor of the Beis HaMikdash. V'shel hektish shenagach l'shor shel hedyot. In both directions, Allah is pater. Shneimar shor re'ehu v'lo shor shel hektish. Whenever we're interacting with a shor shel hektish, the din is that there's a ptur. Nobody pays. Everybody's done. It's just a gzeres hakasu because of shor re'ehu, shor re'ehu. It's only interpersonal between friends, but not between me and hektish, and not between hektish and me.
It's trying to say that hektish is not your friend.
Basically, so that's one way to put it. Yeah, that's very. That was like my dad kind of line. It's men of a similar generation. But you're younger than my father by a couple of years, I presume.
Everybody's younger than you.
I mean, in this room, that's true. Yeah, we are never going to get through this daf. It's too festive. This Hanukkah is we're a spirited group. So the second case of the Mishnah deals with this. What about a goy? Shor shel Yisrael shenagach l'shor shel Kenani. Here the Defusim Yeshanim have the word nachri. We know, of course, that elements of Shas were censored over the years, and that is a problem. So we really should be learning it the right way. And then he adds in the footnote, he says, v'chein b'chol hasugya. Every time we see the word Kenani here, it's nachri. That's what he just corrects it, like just blanketly corrects it, which from the censorship perspective, we understand. But to make sure that we're academically learning the text just the right way, we're going to read whatever's in front of us, but we should just know that Kenani here means a nachri, means a goy. So let's say I have an interpersonal damage with a goy. So shor shel Yisrael shenagach l'shor shel Kenani pater. What about the other way? The shel Kenani, what if a goy was shenagach l'shor shel Yisrael? Says the Mishnah, bein tam, bein muad, meshalim nezek shalom. How are you machayev him? He's a goy. He doesn't come to Bezdin with you. All of the complexities, fine. But Medina, a goy that damages me, he's obligated to pay me with a shor. We don't even assume that the animal's tam. Bein tam, bein muad, it doesn't matter. The din is, says the Mishnah, state that he is chayev nezek shalom.
I was going to say soon follow that's trouble.
We'll see. There's a lot of there are a lot of complexities in this Mishnah. It seems easy at the outset, but it's not such a pasha Mishnah. And the Gemara opens 3 lines before the wide lines, 12 lines or so before the bottom of the page on Lamed Zayin Amud Beis as follows: Mas nisan deloker Reb Shimon ben Menasya. Our anonymous Mishnah certainly was not authored by Reb Shimon ben Menasya. Why not? Because the Tanya, we have a brisa. The brisa reads, Shor shel hedyot shenogach shor shel hektish. The brisa reads that if you have a regular person's animal and it gores a shor shel hektish, and to your point, here the brisa uses the right language. You get right. This is a raya for you. And v'shel hektish shenogach shor shel hedyot pater shnemar shor re'ehu v'lo shor shel hektish. This is basically a quote of our Mishnah. Tzitut. It's mamish like word for word. But our Mishnah didn't have a dissenting opinion. Yet here, look at the dissenting opinion. Reb Shimon ben Menasya Omer, here we go. Shor shel hektish shenagach shor shel hedyot pater, v'shel hedyot shenagach shor shel hektish. But if my animal damages a shor shel hektish, bein tam, bein muad meshalem nezek shalem. So what do we see over here? We see that the ptur of shor re'ehu doesn't apply when I, as a hedyot, when my animal damages hektish. I'm chayiv to pay nezek shalem. That means, and the first nakud of our Gemara is that our Mishnah is certainly not authored by Reb Shimon ben Menasya. 10 lines from the bottom. Amrei Maikas of Reb Shimon. I don't understand Reb Shimon Shita. I re'ehu dafka. If the word re'ehu, shor re'ehu amar Rachmana, if the word re'ehu was really meant to be inferred from, then I don't understand. If any interaction with hektish was meant to be excluded from the word re'ehu, then why would you be pater? And why would you be pater? Why wouldn't you be pater in all cases? V're'ehu lav dafka, and if the word re'ehu was a loose terminology, let's just call it lashon b'nei adam. So then, afilu dehektish nami kinagach dehedja lechayev. one way or the other. You're splitting a hair that you should not be splitting. If we have shor re'ehu, and re'ehu is meant to be inferred that any negicha that involves hektish, if you're saying that it's not included in re'ehu, then everything should be putter. Don't tell me halfsies, that it's only putter in one direction of damage, but not the other. Don't say that. And if re'ehu is not dafka, then everyone should be chayiv. So what is this opinion of Rav Shimon ben Menashe? And if you want to say the onkosav re'ehu dafka, really re'ehu is dafka, and really there should be no chiyuvim at all. Umihu dehedyot kinogach dehektish. Maybe perhaps we could argue that when my animal gores a hektish animal, the reason why we're saying we're mechayiv is because mishum de kamaisi le mikal v'chomer dehedyot, because we have a kal v'chomer that indicates as much. So really, Re'ehu is dafka and I should be pater. But for an unrelated reason, not because of shor Re'ehu, for an unrelated reason, if I as a hedyot damage the animal of hektish, I am chayiv. Why? What's the kal v'chomer? 4 lines from the bottom. Uma hedyot shenogach shel hedyot chayiv, just like a hedyot that damages the shore of a hedyot is chayiv, ki nogach the hektish lo kol shekein de mechayiv. It's a little bit of an odd kal v'chomer because the whole premise of our Gemara is that hektish is not the same as hedyot. So you can't make a kal v'chomer and say, well, I mean, if two hedyotos, if their shvarim are nogeach one another, they have to pay. Well, then certainly if it's hektish is a different bracket. It's not apples and oranges. It's apples and a baseball bat. They're totally unrelated to one another. So this kal v'chomer is very weird. The Gemara doesn't even like it. Says the Gemara, okay, I'll give you a little bit. But if you're going to make that comparison, if you want to say that just like by hedyot to hedyot there's damages, so all the more so by hedyot to hektish, then what is the punishment by hedyot to hedyot? Tam is chatzin nezek. So then malahalan tam chatzin nezek kachanami chatzin nezek. If Rav Shimon ben Menashe is saying that the reason why I'm chayiv, if I'm a hedyot and my animal damages hektish, is because of a kal v'chomer, so then from the start of the kal v'chomer, from hedyot to hedyot, what's the punishment of tam? Chatzin nezek. But Rav Shimon ben Menashe says nezek shalim imanav shach. Even if you want to say the kal v'chomer doesn't hold up water, it doesn't work because then the punishment is wrong. According to Rav Shimon ben Menashe, that can't be as maramako. Ella says the Gemara 2 lines from the bottom. El Amar Reish Lakish. Really, any type of damage in regards to a muad, of course, should be nezek shalim. And when we see the word re'ehu, and this is very important, when it says shor re'ehu, that's taught in the psukim by an animal that's docile only. It's not written by a muad. It's only written by a tam. So then re'ehu hu de tam mishalim chatzin nezek mechlal de hektish. When it comes to hektish, bein tam bein muad mishalim nezek shalim. That's an inference that we make from the fact that re'ehu is only written by tam, and therefore we have this lower bracket of hedyot, which is where we have rules of tam, and we have this upper bracket of hektish where no, everything is going to be nezek shalim. That's what the Gemara says. Turning to the top of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. Because as the Gemara says, Di'im Kain, Nichtov, Kro, Lahai, Re'ehu, Gabe Muad. You should have written the word Re'ehu by Muad. Why didn't you write it by Muad? You only wrote it by Tam. So it comes to teach you that when you're dealing with a regular case of Tam, yes, absolutely, Re'ehu, that's when we exclude. But once you kick things up a notch, you're dealing with Hektish, no, you can't say Tam anymore, then everything is going to be. So that's how Shimon ben Menashe could have a valid shita, although he's certainly not the author of our Mishnah. All right, let's talk about some people who are not of the faith. Shor shel Yisrael shenagach, shor shel Kenani pater, like we said in our Mishnah, the Gemara says, Amrei mimanav shach, I do not understand. And the same argument that we gave earlier, if the word re'ehu, of shor re'ehu, is meant to leave an inference that the only time there's a chiyuv is when we are re'im, and that therefore if you're a goy and we're not re'im, therefore there should be total pturim, then how does our Mishnah state a chiyuv in any case at all? By a goy. That should not happen. If re'ehu was intentional to say that any interactions with a goy are pater, then deknani ki nogach liYisrael nami li pater. You should be pater in that case where a goy gores, where a goy's animal gores a Jew's animal. And be'irehu lav dafka. And if re'ehu was not meant to be inferred from that a goy is precluded from any financial predicaments, then afilu Yisrael ki nogach deknani chayim. You can't have it both ways. If you hold of the drush of shor re'ehu, then everything of the world of goyim should be pater. And if you don't hold of re'ehu, then everything in the world of a goy should be chayiv. But you can't have that when I damage a goy, I'm pater, but when he damages me, it's nezek shalim. Pick one. You're either holding of the svara of the drush of re'ehu or you're not. So the Gemara says 5 lines down, Amar Rabbi Abo Amar Kra. The pasuk says, Amad v'ayimoded eretz ra'ah v'yeser goyim. What was this pasuk talking about? Ra'ah, what was seen? That Sheva mitzvot shekibul alein b'nei Noach. The 7 Noahide laws, we know that there are seven Noahide laws that all people in the world are supposed to keep. Most of them are fairly obvious, but the world is fairly crazy. But Ever Minachai, Birkas Hashem, Gezel, Giloy Arayas, Din, Hereg, and Avodah Zarah. The way to remember it is Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav. That's it. That's an easy acronym to remember. So that's again, Ever Minachai is Aleph, Beis is Birkas Hashem. They can't blaspheme. Gimel, the first one is Gezel, the second one is Giloy, Dalet is Din. You have to have a court system. Hey is Hereg, and the Vav is Avodah Zarah. It's still cheating on the Vav, but it works for the memory banks. I had a family call me 5-6 years ago. Hello, shalom, Rabbi. Would love you to do a circumcision for my child. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Congratulations. By the way, are you Jewish? No, but we are observant of the 7 Noahide laws. We believe in the Bible. We know that we're non-Jews, and we know that our obligations only extend to these 7 laws. However, we would like to have a circumcision in accordance with the covenant of Abraham, which is their Lashon B'nai Adam. It's the way they talk. Okay, I'm happy to help. The baby's a goy. I'm not wearing a talis. I'm not making a bracha. The baby's a goy. Actually, stam a goy. Everyone's chayv and shav mitzvos b'nei noach. You're only special because you're keeping them. But everybody has the same. But yeah, you're a zero. You're not a year. You're not nothing. You're not the baby's a goy. I got there and there was a Chabad Rav at the bris. I'm like, man. I went over to the Rav privately. I'm like, Shalom Aleichem. What are you doing here? He says, I have a chavrusa with this person. I'm like, why do you have a chavrusa with a ben Noach? He said the Lubavitcher Rebbe held that there was a mitzvah of kiruv because they have to keep 7 mitzvos. Our job is to be marbe kvod shamayim, and even by a goy, if you can be makarev them to keep the seven mitzvos of Bnei Noach, you are doing outreach. I've never heard of such a thing at the time. A half of a fella. It's true. It's the real deal. I said, isn't there a priority for Yidden? He said, yeah, there's priority. I'm like, God, what are you doing here? Go back to the base medrash. Go put on tefillin in Times Square somewhere. Okay. Anyways, fun story. So anyways, the Gemara says, why over here, in this case, in regards to the Ben Noach, why is it that we're saying that they're pater? Because these people were not keeping the halacha properly. So what happened? Kevan shelo kaimo omad hitir mamonan leYisrael. He made it that the Jews don't have to pay them when there are damages. Meaning, really, we do hold of Re'ehu. We do. You're a goy. You're pater. But because the goyim were not keeping the Shabbat mitzvahs, we made a shtick that you're not. We don't have to pay you anymore because you're not keeping the din of Shabbat mitzvahs. Fascinating. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mehacha, there's another pasuk, Hofia Mehar Paran. Mi Paran Hofia, from Paran, we reveal Mamon on Yisrael. We make it so that the non-Jews who damage Jews, let's say the Nachri's shore damages the Yid's shore. The halacha is that, that if the Yid's shore damages the Nachri's shore, that I don't have to pay. So 2 psukim, Tanya Nami Hachi, 10 lines down. The Brisa brings both of these shitas actually. The Brisa says, Shor shel Yisrael shenogach shor shel Kanani pater. That if my animal is nogach agoy, then it's pater. But shor shel Kanani shenogach shor shel Yisrael, as we saw in our Mishnah, bein tam bein muad meshalim nezik shalim, that a goy would have to pay me nezik shalim shneimar because of the pasuk we saw Amad v'imodid eretz Rabbi Yisrael goyim, that he wasn't keeping the Sheva mitzvos b'nei Noach v'omer. And then the Brisa adds in Rav Yochanan, which makes our Gemara very weird. Why did it say and Rav Yochanan gave another answer? No, it's a Brisa. So the Chorah, Rav Yochanan didn't have the Brisa because otherwise he never would have said this. It must have just not been in his library. And the Omer, the pasuk says, second of the wide lines, Hofim Mehar Paran v'chulei. My Omer. Why? Again, we're only asking within the Brisa because the Amoraim would just be Stama Machlokas, but the Brisa, what?
The Gemara before said, Amad v'hitim amayim Yisrael. In Yeshua's time, what they have the wood choppers, what's it called? And he still accepted them. Even though because we made an agreement, we held our part of the agreement, even though they didn't hold their part of the agreement. The Hebrew Gemara goes opposite. Since the goyim didn't hold their thing, so we're letting them out.
No.
Generally, Yidden, when we make
no, that's not what it means. It means that if I damage a goy, really I should be chayiv to pay them. But the Gemara is saying now that we're no longer chayiv to pay the goy if we damage them. Really, Re'ehu precludes any interactions between me and a goy. Really, I should be chayiv. I really should be chayiv to pay the goy. But because they weren't keeping Shabbat Menuach, then I don't have to pay you anymore if you're a goy and I damage you. That was what happened. It was a slap on the wrist for them. You're not doing your job for Shabbat Menuach, then I don't have to pay you anymore. That was what the Gemara says was the din in the Brisa. We weren't being nice to them. They would lose out whenever we damaged them. we weren't allowed to damage them. I'm just saying, but if it happened, and they'd say, well, you're chayav to, like, no, do you keep Shabbos b'nei Noach? Yes or no? If you keep them, I'm chayav to pay you. If you don't, I'm not chayav to pay you.
See, like in the present Israeli government, many times when we held deals with the Arabs, they didn't hold their part, but we held our part, even though they didn't hold their part. We went one step above.
It sounds like the word today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a fat blot of Gemara ahead of us. This we can't do now, but we
Okay.
can do it later.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says, "Mai ve'omer." Why do we need both Mari Makomos? Third line of the wide lines, because v'chitema. If you want to say that Hai Omad ve'moded Eretz miBoile l'cheder of Masna u'cheder of Yosef. These two Amoraim, and we'll soon see what they learned. They learned that first pasuk differently. They didn't learn that first pasuk as a matir that we no longer have to pay the goy. So if that's true, if you want to say that first drasha is like the limud of Rav Masna or of Yosef, and therefore it's not available for the drasha to say that I'm no longer chayiv to pay when I damage a goy, fine. Toshma, therefore we have another pasuk. One way or the other, the Bryce is going to cover all of its bases that we do not have to pay a goy when we damage them in regards to a case of a short. So says the Gemara, what were those other limudim of Rav Masna and Rav Yosef? So says the Gemara, a third of the way down, Mai de Rav Masna, the case of Rav Masna, what? Amar Rav Masna, same pasuk, Amad Vaimoded Eretz Rav Chule, Ma Ra. So what was the pasuk talking about? What was seen? That the Sheva Mitzvos, Ra, Sheva Mitzvos, Sheva Mitzvos, Shenitztavel and Bnei Noach, Velo Kaimum, they were not keeping them. But, whereas in the previous drasha we said, and therefore we don't have to pay them when we damage them, here, Amad Vehigle Osame Alad Mosam, they were kicked off their land. So therefore, the pasuk's not being learned to say that you're pater from payment. That's why we needed the ve'omer. So that's why Rav Masna had a little bit of a different thing. Says the Gemara, Umay mashma dahai v'yeser leshna de igluyehu. How do we know that the word in the pasuk of yeser teaches a language of igluye, a language of kicking them off of their land, of exiling? Says the Gemara halfway down, or just about ksifach of yeser goyim uchsiv hasam lenaser bahen al haaretz mitargamin. And the words lenaser bahen al haaretz means lekafza bahon al ara, to jump from your land. Like kofetz in Hebrew is to jump, so to jump from the land. So that was the Maramakum of Rav Masna, that he learned the pasuk of Amad differently than the way we initially learned it. And Maida Rav Yosef, how did he learn that pasuk differently? Rav Yosef Amad b'moded Eretz Rav Chule Ma Ra Sheva Mitzvah shekiblu aleim b'nei Noach v'lo kaimum. They weren't keeping it, and Amad v'hitiran lahem. And then it seemingly says that the Sheva Mitzvahs were no longer obligatory upon them. I don't know how that works mechanically. Isn't that a dindo raisa for them to keep thought?
Was there something you sin once, fine, sin twice, and the third time you think it's heter?
No. The Gemara here is saying, it's very hard to understand this Gemara, and it's going to question it in a minute, but the Gemara is saying that when the Goyim in this kufa of history were not keeping the Sheva Mitzvos B'nei Noach, that hitirum, then we removed, whatever this means, we removed their obligation to keep the Sheva Mitzvos B'nei Noach.
It means they had no more.
Or does it mean remove the hitir lahem to us their money?
No, it's not talking about money. It's saying that they no longer had to keep them. Then the Gemara challenges it. He's great, Iska. You're rewarding them. You just made their. I'm not listening to your rules. Fine, I'll take away the rule.
Take them away,
You know, like that. That's not.
The next question.
Yeah,
If it was like, I don't have a tsuba, I was-
that's going to come up in the Gemara in a
Yeah,
second.
it's gonna
Actually,
come
that's
up.
true. That's the answer of the Gemara.
Yeah.
But the Gemara was actually bothered right now, which is, what do you mean? You just. I'm trying to imagine in my home where like my parents are like, please go clean your room. And I'm like, no. And they're like, fine, you don't need to, sweetheart.
That's the third time you say no, no. cleaning.
Yeah, no, that would not have worked in my home.
Thinking so.
No. So says the Gemara, but this is not reasonable. You're saying that they don't have to keep the Sheva Mitzvos B'nei Noach. That's crazy. In Kain Matzinu, Chote Niskar. One of my favorite lines. I use this as a parent all the time when we're deciding what consequences to give. If I tell my child I'm giving them a consequence, I can't dissolve it. I can't. In my bones, I can't. Not because I'm a good parent, but because I have a hang-up of Chote Niskar. And I'm like, no, you need your consequence, because otherwise you are a Chote Niskar. Then you benefited from your crimes. So the Gemara says, this is Chote Niskar. Amar Mar Barid the Ravna, Lomar Shafilu Mekaimen Osa, and Mekablen Aleyan Schar. That even if they were to do them, no, you've lost the schar. The punishment was the schar, not the maisa. Of course, that's the whole beauty of Torah. The mitzvahs themselves are beautiful, and the schar for them is leilu leila, but they're going to lose out on their schar. They're not going to get them even if they do it. Says the Gemara, Velo, is that true? Tanya, Reb Meir Omer, Minayin she'afilu nachri, if there's a non-Jew, ve'osek b'Torah, and he's learning Torah, shu kekoin gadol. Some of our brains should be Some alarms should be going off in our head right now. We don't teach Goyim Torah. We'll learn the Tosfos in a couple minutes. Talmud Lomar, how do we know that they are like a Kohen? Because the pasuk says, Asher yaseh adam yaseh osam ha'adam v'chai bohem. Kohanim v'lim l'Yisraelim lo ne'emar ela adam. The pasuk says that any human who learns Torah, they are on that level. Halamadat. What do we see from Yeshua? Afilu nachri v'osek b'Torah reu Kohen gadol. So what do you mean that the guy who's keeping mitzvahs doesn't get schar? That's not true. The guy who learns Torah is treated like a Kohen Gadol Pashut, he gets schar. So you can't tell me that what it meant when it said that he tirum, that they don't have to keep the Shabbat mitzvahs b'nei is that they have no schar. Pashut, that they're going to get schar. The Maisa is a good Maisa. You're doing something good. The Gemara says, Amrei, ein mekablan en schar k'mitzvah v'oseh. What it means is that their level of schar is reduced.
The only short interruption, so Adam in this Gemara implies it goes on non-Jews.
Anyone.
Just the word Adam, you're familiar with the Ales?
With what?
Okay.
With, I didn't hear what you said.
I don't want, it'll take too long.
Okay, we'll talk later. So that's what the Gemara says, is that, of course there's schar. So it says the Gemara, their schar is reduced. We know that Gadol HaMitzuvah V'oseh, Me'eno Mitzuvah V'oseh. We're Yidden, we were given. Okay, I don't even know what you're talking about, so, okay. Okay, you go do your thing. Just talk to yourself. I'll get you a mirror and you can just finish your conversation. So says the Gemara that these people, when it says v'hitirum, that they could no longer get the schar of mitzvah v'oseh. They could only get the schar of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, ela kimi she'ena mitzvah v'oseh. To Amar Reb Chanina, Gadol ha-mitzvah v'oseh, yoser mimi she'eno mitzvah v'oseh. Beautiful thing to be able to fulfill a mitzvah and get more schar because you were commanded. That's when the Yetzer Hara kicks up. That's like the famous word when somebody has no Yetzer Hara and everything's so easy. L'chora, they're going.
That's why Rabbi waited for Kadosh Baruch Hu to come to one to do the bris.
Yeah, just like we're not. I know that I'm a Yid. I can tell. I can feel it. I just have a big Yetzer Hara. It's Pashut. It's ABCs. But when someone, now relax with the compliments. Get your mirror back. You were doing good before. So that's really the hard part. Is that we have to. Against our nature. Like tonight I said to one of my children, please go get a placemat. Fleshik, cereal and milk. So my child, bless his heart. No. He gets a small little coffee table, drags it across the house and scratches my wood floor, gets a folding chair and sits down and says, I'll do it this way. Because he's normal. It's good stuff. Because he's normal. He has a Yetzer Hara to not listen to his parents. Good. Now he's a Yid. I know he's a Yid. All right, Tana Rabban at the 2/3 of the way down. Tana Rabban the Brisa writes, Shalcha Malchus Romi. They sent from Rome Shnei Sardiotos, 2 officers, Eitzel Chachmei Yisrael, and they said Limdunu Toraschem, and they acquiesced. Karu v'shanu v'shilshu. They went through Shas with them 3 times. Says the Balei Tosfos, two Tosfosim from the bottom. Karu v'shanu v'shiltu b'imtom Rabbamin b'chagiga. Hamalami Torah lo b'kochavim over be'aseh. The Magid Varav Liyaakov. Can't teach Torah to a guy. Call him Alami Torah Der Chayv Misa. I think the Rambam quotes that Ladina. It says the Gemara V'Yeshlomar Debal Korcho Asu. It must be that they forced him to do Al Pi Divrei Malchus. V'lo Nischayv V'Limsor Atzman. But you're not obligated to give up your life. It's a mitzvah aseh. You're not obligated to give up your life to do that. Yinami Asu Atzmam Gerim. Perhaps they actually converted Kedamar B'Sifri de Parsha Af Chovev Amim, that they were ones who were beloved of the nation, and they're the Medrash, seemingly at least implied from here, says that these were converts from Rome who were learning some stark Torah, and they went through everything. We'll see the connection soon to our Gemara. B'shas P'ti Rasan, they learned all Kol Torah Kula. It doesn't say what time frame it is. I would be curious how long it took them, but it says they learned everything 3 times. And then the Gemara says, Amr lehem, on the way out, the Romans said to the Rabbanim, Dikdaknu b'chol Toraschem. We've learned everything in your Torah in detail. Ve'emesu, and your Torah is emes chutz midavar zeh, except for one din that we learned today. Sha'atem omrim shor she'Yisrael shenogach shor shel Knani pater shor shel Knani shenogach shor shel Yisrael bein tam bein mud mishalim nezek shalim. And the Goy says to the Yid, the classic miman of shach. Just imagine the scene on the plane. Excuse me, sir. Miman of shach. I don't understand what you're saying. So the guy said to the Yid, or if they were Gerim, miman of shach, this line makes no sense. Same question we saw above, actually. Ire'ehu dafka. If the word re'ehu is dafka, then afilu deknani ki nagach l'Yisrael pater. You should be pater across the boards. You can't pick and choose. And ve'ire'ehu lav dafka. If re'ehu doesn't exclude goyim from the regular dinim of shore, so then afilu d'Yisrael ki nagach deknani l'chayim. The davar zeh, said the Romans, Ein anu modiano salamalchus. We're not going to tell this to the Romans because they're going to be very upset that you made this distinction. That when we damage you, we have to pay nezek shalim. But when you damage us, you're potter. They knew it's that kind of din that like when it's unearthed, it has a bad, doesn't smell good, doesn't feel good. So they,
Making a din like that?
I mean, the applications of Ava are not really like that. The applications of Ava is where we're makil on an Isser because of Ava. So, for example, Hatzalah has to answer phone calls from non-Jews on Shabbos. They could have called 911, but they didn't. They called Hatzalah. When I was on Hatzalah in the Heights, every once in a while, I didn't take any Shabbos calls when I was there, but the guys there who took Shabbos calls, they happened all the time because our response time was 20 times faster in New York City. People called Hatzalah all the time. I'd say a quarter of the patients were Hispanic in the Heights, whatever the numbers were. It was a wild number because they found out. And they know that Yidden were good at this stuff. But Mishum Eva, you're allowed. So that's an override in regards to existing dinim. But the establishment of the din is never built out of Eva. It's just an override. I believe that's
In other words, the practical application of it is different than.
correct. How you execute a halacha may change because of Eva. It's an afterthought. It's not the. It's
That's
not
what
that-
Goyim ride the Hatzalah cars on Shabbos now?
Not here. Here we have Yidden.
No, I think in New York.
Not when I was there.
Okay, now I
Yeah.
think they have Goyim.
Yeah, could be.
driving it.
Could be. I don't know. Not when I was there, Mike.
Here they have going bringing cars back.
They did
That's a true. That's Igros Moshe, right? You can drive your car back after an emergency.
for the next call.
No,
No, I shouldn't say the
yeah,
next call,
that-
because if you don't
emotionally,
let him drive back,
he's not going to take. He's not going to take the next call, and that's because of nefashos, right? So the Ramosha finds stands true about that. Okay, let's get into some agaritas. Says the Gemara 8 lines from the bottom. Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda shchiva le barota nebach. Shmuel bar Yehuda lost a daughter. Amru le Rabbanan leula. The rabbi said to Ula, kum nezel ninchame. We're going to go be Menachem Avil. Ula clearly wasn't a fan. Amar lahu, my isli gabe nechemta de bavloi. Why would I ever go give nechama to Babylonians? Digidufahu, says Rashi, klape mala. They are blasphemers of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. How are they blasphemers of a Kodesh Baruch Hu? Damre, my efshar lemevad. What could I do? Ula didn't like that. Efshar lemevad avda. You could have done something. You didn't do something. What are you saying? If you would have lived your life differently, then you would. Then the kid would. This is being asserted. She would have lived your life differently. Maybe she wouldn't have died at that age in that setting. Whatever the case may be. It sounds like a stark pushback. Anyway, we don't know who this person is, but the person who approached Ula, because the line just said Amr le Rabbanan Ula, Azal hu lechude gabe. So he went by himself. Amr le. To give some comfort to the Avelim, he said the following thing, a little bit of a long drasha. And then from here on, we're going to be talking about the daughters of Lot. Let's see what's going on here. By Yomer Hashem el Moshe al Tetzaras es Moab al Tiskarba milchama. V'chima ala al daito shel Moshe lasos milchama shelo b'rshus. How could Moshe ever start a war without permission? Ela nasa Moshe kal v'chomer ba'atzmo. He had kal v'chomer. Omar uma midyanim shelo bo ela lazar es Moab. The Midianites who only were there to support. They were a supporting army. They weren't the front army to support Moab. Amra Torah there. The pasuk says to Rosh Midyanim v'hiki semosam. You should kill them. Turning to the top of Lamachas Midbeis. But Moab b'ma'atzman lo kol shekain. Beautiful svara by Moshe. Moshe said, if you want me to kill the backup army, Pasha, you want me to kill the primary army. So Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this is a big musar for us when we think we understand things. We usually don't. Says the Gemara, lo keshe alsa al daitcha, alsa al daiti. The way that you think isn't the way that I think. In this case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is omniscient. He knows so much more than we do in breadth and depth and time and space that we don't have anything like that. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe? You can't fight them. You can't fight Moab. Shtei predos, there are two birds or fowls, a reference to two women. Shtei predos tovos, who are good. Yeshli lehotzian mehen. There are two women who I need to extract from Moab. Who are they? Rus ha-Moabiyah v'Naamah ha-Amonis. Look at the nations. Moab and Ammon. How were those nations created? The older daughter cohabited with Lot on night number 1, and then she named the generation Moab. And the younger daughter cohabited with him and conceived the next night and named the next generation Ammon. So says the Gemara, "V'alo dvarim kal v'chomer." Uma b'shvil shtei predos tovos, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu knew that these two gems of women would be emanating from Moab and Ammon, Rus and Naamah respectively. Then chas Kadosh Baruch Hu beis umos gedos v'lachrivan, and therefore Kadosh Baruch Hu told us not to destroy Moab and Ammon. Bito shel Rebbe, your daughter, he says to Shmuel Bar Yehuda, if she hadn't already taken out all of the good, she's already extracted. The way it's framed in the Gemara is not written in a way that we would ever say it, but it's just not. But the Nakuda is right, and we say this sometimes. Look what she accomplished in her short life is the politically correct way to say what he's saying. He's saying she wouldn't be dead if there was more good to come from her. That's just. It's not the nice way to talk. But the Gemara is saying that Nakuda, that was the Divrei Nechama that was given to Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Yikes. I just got to... All right, you guys have all seen the videos of what not to say to Shiva House? I hope you guys saw it. I heard there was a Givaldic insurance policy. You know, these like terrible, cold, crass. It's horrible.
It's horrible. And we all laugh.
It's horrible. But I can tell you, I sat Shiva for my brother, and people are the most well-intended, and the things, because they're nervous and uncomfortable, the things that fall out of their mouth, they don't always land well. I was just giving a course this week, and one of the things that I taught on the course is you have to measure your intent and your impact when you speak. It was a parenting course.
Robinson once told me that, I think it may have been an actual course that he took, back to where I'm going to say thing. Any sentence that begins with the word "at least" should not be uttered.
Yeah.
At least you lived a long life. At least you didn't.
Yeah. No qualifications. Correct.
Any sentence, just stop.
But again, I just want to say, because I don't want anyone to feel bad about it, it's perfectly well intended. It's not like they have a bad bone in their body when they say, it's just it's like nervous energy, and they say things, they're like foaming at the mouth, The Chanuch Teller.
Yeah.
He didn't speak at all. He didn't even say Makom Menachem, which was ironic because now, like, that's the whole spitz of going to Beis Sheva. Apparently it's not found in the Rishonim. I don't even know what the earliest Marimakom is, but it's not a requirement to say. We make our kids say whatever. It's the right thing to do in our culture. But if you're getting technical with Dina, it's actually not a requirement. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go. Says the Gemara, 8 lines down. Lamed Ches Amud Beis, Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan. Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu mekapech schar kol beria. Kadosh Baruch Hu does not withhold reward from any creature. Afilu schar sicha na, even one simple conversation. What's an example of this? The ilu bechira de ka'amra Moav. The older daughter who cohabited with Lot called her child Moab, which very much sounds like from her father, right? It sounds like Me'av. It's a war that you cannot have with them. But you are allowed to tax them. You are allowed to, not be as nice to them as you would to a people that you're very close to. Masha'en Kain, Seira, the younger daughter, the Ka'amra, Ben Ami, the son of my nation, which is a little more modest, granted, on the backdrop of a terribly immodest activity. Without the word milchama, klal, meaning so even a sicha, and the Mishnah is about this also, that when a person is asi litena sadin, that even a conversation between ish ishto is going to be measured. It's going to be something that we're held accountable for. Halfway down. The older daughter was rewarded for doing her mitzvah first. Again, it's hard to call it a mitzvah, but she was rewarded. There was one generation difference out of the 4 generations, as we'll soon see, that the older daughter had as a benefit that the younger daughter did not. Oved, Yishai, V'David, Shlomo. V'Lusira, Ad Rechavim, it was yet another generation, which was one of the children of Shlomo, until they were able to see the fruits of their labor. That's when Naamah was born. Tan Rabbanan, back into some halachic Gemaras, and we'll be stopping at the Mishnah Mir Hashem on the top of Lamed Tes Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Shorsha Yisrael Shenagach Shorshal Kusi. We've spoken about a Hedyod and Hektish. We've spoken about a Hedyod and a Goy. Now we're talking about a Kusi Pater. Shal Kusi Shenagach Shorshal Yisrael Tam Mishalim Chatzin Nezek Umur Mishalim Nezek Shalim. And that's Tana Kama. Rabbi Meir Omer Shorsha Yisrael Shenagach Shorshal Kusi Pater. Shal Kusi Shenagach Shorsha Yisrael Bein Tam Bein Muad Mishalim Nezek Shalim. So Rabbi Meir and the Tana Kama argue about the Chatzin Nezek. Meaning is if it's actual docile, if it's actual time that you pay chatzin nezek, they just look at the realities on the ground. Reb Meir is more categorical and says it doesn't matter; it's always going to be nezek shalim. Lememra, is this to teach us to sever Reb Meir kusim gere arayos hein? Or is that to say that according to Reb Meir kusim, the fact that we treat them like a goy and that they're chayav nezek shalim, doesn't that show you that these kusim are goyim and that they're gerei arayos, saying that they converted because of lions, they converted out of fear, and a conversion out of fear is not a conversion, even if you check all the boxes, mikvah, mila, you do everything right, kabbalah, but if you're terrified, that doesn't mean you want to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That just means you're scared. But that can't be to say that Rav Meir would hold that they're Geirei Arayosim. Why? Because Raminu, 12 lines from the bottom. All of the stains of a woman, meaning external droplets of dam, of blood, that come from the place of Rekem are Tahor, and we assume that they're Goyim. Rav Yehuda Metame ben Meshem Gerim V'Torim. That no, Rav Yehuda says they actually might be Jews who converted, so that we have to treat the blood as though they are actual Tmeos. Mi ben hanachrim tahorim, mi ben Yisrael, mi ben akusim. So it says the Gemara that if it's mi ben hanachrim, for sure it's going to be tahor. Mi ben Yisrael, mi ben akusim, Rav Meir metame. What does that show you? If Rav Meir is metame, the dam of akusi, that means he thinks that she's a yid. Because if you're a goy, there's no dam nida by a goy, no such thing. You have to be a yid. They have to have the level of tumah, to have the level of kedusha. So that's what the Gemara is discussing. So Rav Meir says pashat that he holds that they're actually considered Jews. So therefore, the Gemara says you're absolutely right. What did Rav Meir hold? Rav Meir held in our original brisa. If we look back at the brisa, which is about 2/3 of the way down, Rav Meir Omer, he had said, Ashor she'Yisrael shenogach shor shel kusi is pater, but that a kusi is treated like a goy. And says the Gemara, why did we create a ptur between us and them? Because we didn't want there to be transactions between the two groups. We didn't want them to get married. It's like Bishul Akum. We don't want it's shelo hischasnu, but we don't want them to get married. Masiv Reb Zer, that's not necessarily true because we have an example where we see that there was a knas that was applied, not in the same vein. Says the Gemara, Masiv Reb Zer, 4 lines from the Bana Sheishlem knas, Abola Mamzeres Valanasina Valakusis, that there is a knas in those cases if a person has Tashma Shemita with one of those people. We should also make a knas that there shouldn't be a knas on the Tashma Shemita. We should make it that there's no interactions beyond what was already done. Don't add more interactions between them. We don't want people to have relationships with the kusin. So Amar Abaye, no. Turning to the top of Lametes Aleph, as we head to the Mishnah, Kadesh Shelo Yehei Chotei Niskar. There, we're more concerned about the fact that the yid is going to sleep with this person and have no slap on the wrist. That's worse than the concern of the interactions. They should get a punishment. Says Gemara, but why don't you just take the money and at least give it to aniyim? Don't give it to kusim. Just dedicate the money and say, okay, you did this. You have to give $20 to tzedakah, $100 to tzedakah. Okay, you don't have to give it to them directly. You don't have to give it to the kusim. You can't do that because nobody's claiming the money. That's not the slide. There's no chotein, there's no payment in that case. Because what if I don't give it? Who's claiming me? Nobody. The person that I owe the money to, in theory, should have been the person that he slept with. You should owe them money for sleeping with them. It says the Gemara, because of that, you're not allowed to dedicate the money to the aniyim. And therefore, because we were concerned about chotein niskar, then really, because we're concerned about chotein niskar, therefore, we have to make sure that if a man sleeps with the kusi, that he does actually, in fact, have to pay her. I felt that there's a concern of communication, which we don't want them to communicate. Masha'en came in its short we just say we're pater from paying. That's how Rav Meir managed to balance all of these cases. We'll stop right here. Mir Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with Daf Lametes. I will be out of town, but still giving shiur live on Zoom on Wednesday night on time. Just going to be on Zoom. Mir Hashem, I don't know exactly what time I'll be back on Thursday. I'll let you know, but I'll keep you posted. I'm also not here for Shabbos. You're on, David Merzel. It's going to be great. Have a good night.
Okay, you're gonna give